Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Science Success Center's Virtual Biology Career Panel for Fall 2024. I am Jeremy. I will be directing the panel today. We have a few great panelists that are going to, give their perspective on, their own personal careers in biology, and hopefully, give you some advice for how you can be successful in your current degree and maybe down the road for your, future careers down the line. Uh, so I wanted to give a chance for our panelists to introduce themselves. Uh, so I think we're going to start with Dr. Dosworth. So Dr. Dosworth, could you please describe the experiences that led you to this point in your, academic and professional career?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Jeremy Dodsworth, the chair of biology department. And just briefly, how did I get to be where I am? Um, I didn't start off, wanting to or knowing that I wanted to be a professor or um, a teacher or anything like that. Um, the upshot is sort of the kind of a chain of events and knowing or having connections is kind of how I got to where I am now. So I think I was interested in general in science, but when I went to college as an undergraduate, which was in Wisconsin, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But it just so happened that the my former Boy Scout master when I was in high school and grade school was a professor at that university, and he encouraged me to get involved in research when I was there, and so I probably would never have otherwise done that, but I did, and that got me interested in doing research, and then I ended up getting doing research in a lab that worked on microbiology among other things in the plant pathology department. But that got me interested in microbiology, which I didn't know I had any interest in before. And then I ended up going to graduate school and in Seattle, and one of the people that I overlapped with just for about 6 months, who by the time I graduated there and got my PhD, he had a position for me to do or someone to do postdoctoral work with him on hot springs, which is what I work on now. And he contacted me and said, "Hey, I've got this position. Would you like to work with me on this?" So uh, I ended up doing that in Las Vegas, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. There is actually a university there. And then that's kind of how I ended up here, is because I wanted to continue doing work on the hot springs that were in this area. Um, there were, just kind of having, connections, professional connections, knowing people, keeping in contact with people is how I kind of ended up where I am. I doesn't necessarily mean that that's, the only thing that's important, but that's one thing that I would do is kind of, if you're, try to keep up a network of people and look for opportunities, and maybe some that you might not always expect.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Dosworth. So yeah, we'll move on to Dr. Newcomb. If you would want to give just a brief introduction of, what led you to this point in your career so far.
Okay, well, Dr. Dodsworth and I are both from Wisconsin. So, I believe his undergrad was at Madison. I did my undergrad in Milwaukee because I'm from Milwaukee. And then I went into my undergrad, how I got started into research. So I kind of did, I think before I went to college, I always thought maybe I'd be a vet. But by the time I got to college, I think I knew I wanted to do some kind of like molecular type of work, whether it's in microbes or eukaryotic cells or something. Um, so I was interested in that. And school is great. Then I was a single parent in my summer of first year of college is just crazy. And so it took me a little longer to get out of undergrad because I did go part-time 2 semesters and didn't go one semester, and then I spent extra time. I only needed one class, but I purposely delayed it so that I could get more research experience, get more upper division class elective experience. Because you don't have to, if you do want to go on and get your PhD, you don't have to get your master's, and master's programs don't pay you, but PhD programs do. And so I wanted to make sure my undergraduate record, which was cheaper to get because I got as a single parent, I got a lot of Pell Grants um, and things like that. So I basically spent 6 years in Milwaukee, and then I went to Madison. Um, let's see, oh, I should say about my connection in Milwaukee. I'm so sorry because that's what remind me. I did also have a connection. So I think I got more serious after having my daughter, and like I got to get into a research lab. And my brother was actually in the Milwaukee Mandolin Orchestra with a mandolin player who was a microbiologist at UW Milwaukee. And so I started out on federal work study doing dishes in his lab. And I never actually did research in his lab, but it's the first time I saw DNA in a gel, and I was so excited. I could not believe how excited I was. It was amazing. And and then I ended up working for a female advisor for my research. So I left his lab and did like a research thing with her. And then anyway, then off to Madison, and then I did a postdoc in Texas. Um, and then I really wanted to, I always knew I wanted to kind of teach as opposed to like working in a really intensive research institution for academics. So, I kind of, when I was looking for my faculty position, I was really targeting the CSU because I've always loved California, made it to the promised land. And, I love the mountains, so I did target, I applied to a lot of CSUs, so I was really happy to get here. Thank you.
No, of course. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your introduction. So we'll move on to our last panelist, Miss Stephanie Ruck. Stephanie, if you'd like to, introduce yourself, how you got to this point in your career.
Hi, yes. Thanks for having me today. So to start off, I'm originally from Missouri. So I completed my undergrad studies at the University of Missouri. And during that time, what really kind of propelled me into this field was getting undergrad research experience. So I worked in labs that studied animal behavior in reptiles and amphibians. And then after I finished my undergraduate degree, I wanted to further explore working with wildlife, in the field as opposed to working just in the lab in lab studies. And so after undergrad, I ended up working a little bit in Florida, studying anolis learning behavior, as well as in Alabama, looking at population density and gopher tortoises. And then I moved out to California officially when I got a position working for the United States Geological Survey over in the Mojave Desert, working with Mojave Desert tortoises, doing monitoring and conservation work with that species. And so those, field research experiences kind of let me see that I really am passionate about working in the outdoors, working in conservation. And so that kind of made me want to continue that and develop my own projects, using my own ideas and predictions. So then I ended up going on to my master's, where I'm currently getting my master's at CSUSB in Dr. Bree Putman's lab. So I think the master's has given me that autonomy to develop my own research questions, my hypotheses, my methods. And then, now I am currently working at the National Park Service in the Santa Monica Mountains, where I'm still working in conservation, and just working with a variety of species in the animal ecology division.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. So yeah, I always love to see just the variety of different interests and research directions that our panelists tend to go in. And yes, I think we have a really good spread of different research from our panelists today. So yeah, thank you all so much for your introductions. Now, I did want to take a brief pause for our audience. For anyone who's attending as a Science Success Center student, in the chat, we are going to have our attendance link. If you could fill that out when you get the chance, so we can know that you were in attendance today, we'd really appreciate it. All right, so with that said, we will start getting into our questions. So I think the question I wanted to start with, just because I think it goes really well with going from our panelists' backgrounds. Um, uh, I think we'll start with Dr. Dawsworth, so that's all right. Um, uh, when you first entered college, what did you think your career would be like, and how did that change over time?
Yeah, so when I first got to college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm pretty sure I wanted to do something in, very broadly in, what we now call STEM, so science or technology, engineering, etc. Um, I was undeclared as a major when I started, and I'm not sure that you can even do that still here. I think that there's a push to not have students declare something, but I didn't know. And I think initially I wanted to do something in computer science, but I ended up again sort of with these connections. I ended up then uh, declaring as a major chemical engineering. But when I started sort of by chance, working in this lab in the plant pathology department doing microbiology, then I ended up really finding that fascinating and then switching my major to microbiology, essentially. Um, so I really didn't know. And so, for people out there that may not know exactly what you want to do, that's okay. But it's good to kind of maybe try out some different things or talk to people that are in different positions and see what might be good and maybe follow whatever it is that really is interesting to you or exciting to you, or maybe something that allows you to do something that interests you or excites you, even if what you're doing itself maybe doesn't. But yeah, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do to start out. And even when I left, I didn't know that I wanted to do teaching. I really enjoyed the research that I was doing and as a PhD, and sort of where I am now, I kind of get to do both, which is really fun because I get to do research with students, but also teaching, which is kind of what got me into all of this to begin with, was interacting with the teachers that I had and the mentors that I had. So I find that really rewarding now. But yeah, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So if you're in that situation, that's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Dawsworth. Yeah, personally, I completely agree. It's so important to, use that freedom that you have, especially early on, to find, exactly a path that would, bring you satisfaction. Yeah, in those directions. So yeah, thank you so much. Stephanie, if you would like to proceed with the same question.
Yeah, so when I went to undergrad, I knew that I had a passion for biology and science, but I wasn't quite sure which specific field of biology I wanted to go into. At first, I thought, oh, maybe genetics, and I could use genetics research to better study, animals, because I also knew I really wanted to work with animals, but I wasn't quite sure how I could relate that to biological research. And so I did end up shadowing in a genetics lab, and I found out that it wasn't really for me. It was, long laborious hours in the lab, and that's something that I wasn't particularly interested in, but it helped me kind of narrow down what I wanted to do for a career. And so I ended up working in other labs that focused on animal behavior, and I think that was more suitable for my interests. Um, and so I knew I loved science. I knew I loved working with animals and wanted to work with animals. And so now having that concept of being able to study animal behavior is kind of what propelled me to continue working in those labs, getting the research experience for that breadth of study, and propelling me to where I'm at now.
Great. Thank you so much, for your input. Dr. Newcomb, if we could end with you for that particular question, how did things kind of change for you over time?
Well, when I entered undergrad, I definitely declared right away as a biology, and I knew I wanted you know knew I wanted to do something more on the molecular side. So I always thought it was really intriguing that GFP could be expressed anywhere. So I wanted to play around with DNA and things like that. But what kind of focus? Now I work in virology, so my lab is a virology lab. But when you work in molecular biology, I mean, it really you can work almost in anything. So when I was an undergrad, I worked in methanotrophic bacteria. When I went to graduate school, I wanted to work on viruses because I already was intrigued by them very much. But for the department that I got into, that I decided to go to because I preferred the environment and it was closer to my house. It was in Madison, Milwaukee. I was a single parent. One of my mentors said, you'll have your support network just an hour and a half away. So maybe you should go there instead of states away. So then I worked on yeast and I worked on transcription of RNA. And then I was able to get a postdoc in virology because, it's all the same life molecules. And so you're using the same kind of techniques. RNA from a virus is the same as RNA from a cell, right? Um, so as far as coming here, maybe when I was first getting my PhD and maybe first in my postdoc, maybe I maybe thought I wanted to do like a intense research lab, like work at a tier one research institution. But maybe when I first was in PhD program, I think by the time I was in my postdoc, I really didn't want to do that, but my postdoc advisor might have wanted me to do that. Um, he wanted me to wait and not accept the position at CSU, but he really wasn't paying me very well. And thank goodness I took it because the economy crashed the next year, and nobody was hiring. So, but as a grad student, I did some teaching for like medical students in summer that came to Madison for some special program to help them pass their boards. And I just ended up really realizing I like teaching. So when I was doing my postdoc, I had a teaching position at Georgetown University, just working with high school kids in the weekend. Um, yeah. And so I guess it kind of transitioned. The things I researched on transitioned. My view on how much teaching I wanted to do transition. And I think it's good and maybe I'm always transitioning because in my lab I started out influenza virus. We're still working on influenza virus, but now I'm adding another project and that project's going to study feline coronavirus, but as part of that, we need to make the tools. So now I'm learning how to immortalize primary cells, and I'm learning about separating so I'll always stay on the molecular level. But it's kind of nice to be able to I think like Stephanie was saying, design your own projects, really get that have that freedom to so that's one of the benefits of being in academics is having a little bit of freedom. You still have to convince someone to give you money, but but it's a little bit more freedom.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Newcomb. It can be so important. Yeah, especially the further you progress in your career, I think, increasing in that freedom and your own ability to make those choices. Yeah, that's such a valuable thing to develop and to, find satisfaction in. So yeah, thank you so much. So so go ahead and move on to our next question. I think building off of something that uh, Ms. Ruck brought up earlier about being exposed to different skills and things during the course of their career. Um, what skills have been most useful to you in your career so far? And are there any skills that maybe you felt could have been emphasized more over the course of your education or your development? So I think we'll actually start with Ms. Ruck for this next question, if that's all right.
Yeah, I would say the skills that have really helped me throughout my career has been to think, independently and also analytically, and to think from the ideas of, creating these types of projects but also having these questions that I really want to ask, something that really interests me, and then thinking about how it can go. And carry out these projects. So I think having a plan is really helpful. The scientific method, we always talk about that in research. But I think also, being able to work with the team too is really helpful, especially for my work. I do work with the team when I'm out in the field. So being able to communicate with others, being able to kind of project manage, to make sure that the data we're collecting is efficient and well organized, as well. So I think those are important skills to have, in addition to being able to work independently.
Okay, thank you so much. Personally, those soft skills are such an important thing that I think that everyone could stand to improve on and to devote more time to improving on. There's very rarely we'll have a task that doesn't involve working with someone else to kind of arrive where we're getting at. So thank you so much. Dr. Newcomb, maybe if we move on to you for
Okay,
those.
well, I agree with Stephanie, and I'm not going to repeat any of those skills, but except maybe collaborate. That's super important. But one of the skills I think you need to have is the ability to take criticism, and when you're and I guess I told some of my students, you need to kind of have a thick skin, like in science, people are going to challenge your work, and you can't take it as they're challenging you personally, right? We're all just trying to find the answer. Some scientists, though, don't have as good of skills in presenting those things, and so sometimes it can be hard. You sometimes have people that are harsh, and and you really can feel like, what am I doing here? And type of thing. But just being able to know that you know, rejection gets you closer to acceptance. I'm not kidding. I mean, science, there's a lot of people, and we need a lot of minds, and we think differently. So just because one person, gave you a hard time on your research, you might find another person who really likes it. Like, for example, I got a grant reviewed and I got a 1 and a 7. Those are two very opposing scores from two different people. Yeah, so that's all I want to say is just, get a thick skin, take criticism, um, even if it's harshly given to you, look at it and get what you can out of it. And then don't take it personal. And if people are being, jerks, don't collaborate with assholes. That's one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten. Leave those labs. Don't stay there.
I can definitely agree with that. But thank you so much, Dr. Newcomb. And for Dr. Dosworth for that question on those skills.
What skills have been most useful to me? In addition to what um, uh, Stephanie and Laura have said, I think that doing independent research in a lab was really helpful to me in that it helps solidify some skills that we have in the biology department here specifically, but also in a lot of our other science departments. at CSUSB, there's a lot of courses that have lab components, which is really useful to get hands-on experience, which is something that maybe isn't as common at some other universities. And so you can come out with a little bit more skills, but it really helped me to work in a lab when I was an undergraduate, because that really helped me solidify some of those skills even more, and to build, or to maybe to branch off on what off of what Dr. Newcomb said. I think that so you in that situation, you kind of learn that there's a lot of failure, or sort of fits and starts before you might end up being successful, or you have to do a lot of troubleshooting, and that is a good skill that can be implied in a lot of different ways. And kind of like Dr. Newcomb was talking about taking criticism, also being comfortable with being frustrated in something initially if it's not going to work out, because it can give you some perseverance. Um, to that. And yeah, just kind of even when I was starting out as in working in a laboratory where I was mainly doing, odd jobs, or like washing dishes, it had helped me beforehand to have a job doing that sort of thing, and at a restaurant. And so being responsible, learning how to be responsible, uh helpful to others, I think is a good thing that can go a long way in the end. Because I mentioned connections before, and how that led one thing led to another. You don't know necessarily down the road, how those connections will pan out for you. And so if there's someone that, thought well of what you did 10 years ago, then that might, that might help you out. So having sort of uh, keeping up connections, and also um, you know having some practical experience that allows you to um, accept failure initially, to eventually lead to success.
Can I quick add something? It's about we talked about how you changed your career goals. I think what Jeremy brought up about it being so, Dr. Dodsworth brought up about it being so, it can be frustrating sometimes working in the lab. I always say it's like kind of it's a little bit up and down, because you're like, "Ooh, I got the grades well, oh, down that." Whereas I think I became more enamored and wanted to make sure I had more teaching opportunities, because I felt teaching was always pretty successful. Hopefully that won't change. But teaching was always kind of my, if research is bad, well, at least, students are gonna be excited to learn this stuff, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Dodsworth and Dr. Newcomb for your addition. Yeah, thank you so much. I do want to emphasize something from what Dr. Dodsworth was saying. Yeah, definitely at CSUSB, as a CSUSB biology alumni myself, you definitely get a lot of opportunities for hands-on experience with lab work in a lot of our classes. So yeah, definitely for any of our students, definitely take as much advantage of that as possible. A lot of really valuable, just hands-on skills in those sense. Yeah, that you have access to. So yeah, thank you so much. Before we move on to our next question, I do want to open us up briefly to any audience questions that we may have. Um, now, if any student would like to, unmute their mic and ask them directly, feel free at this time. If you'd rather take some time to think about it, I will ask them for them later as well. You're also more than welcome to enter them into the chat, and we can approach them that way as well. So feel free to think about it. We'll give just a second in case there's anyone who had any questions. Okay, completely fine. We will come back to that in just a bit. Oh, okay, we actually do have a question in the chat. So what is the graduate application process like? So yeah, I think we get a lot of value out of that. So yeah, actually, so Dr. Newcomb, if you would like to start with this particular question.
Okay, well, I'm really old, so I don't know how much has changed, but usually you need to have your statement. And I always advise my students when they're writing their statement to, actually take a lot of time, have multiple mentors read it because, as I kind of alluded before, not everybody views everything the same. So it's good to get multiple people's opinions on your statement. You should definitely tailor your statement. So, I have like a kind of set part, but then you're tailoring it a little bit to each individual program that you're applying to so that they know that you took the effort to really look into their program. And um, you should tell them why you can't I'm sorry, I got distracted. You should tell them why you want to be in their program and what you can contribute to their program, right? I applied to a lot of schools. I suggest students to apply to what they can afford, to try to get waivers if they can, even if they're not like for the set waivers automatically waivered. Doesn't hurt to, find the contact from the application side and ask, do you have any additional waivers? Maybe tell them some reason why you should, get one. So apply to as many as you can. When I was applying, at least at Madison, you could put for one application fee in one application, you could put up to 3 departments. So in that case, my statement was a little more generic, I think, or maybe you sent 3 statements. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But I do remember that it was like cost effective. And so, and it worked out because I did not get into the other 2. So it was a good thing I did that. But I did have a good time enjoying going to interviews because they paid for you to go. PhD programs will pay for you, master's programs won't. So I really, really, really strongly encourage you to try to build up your CV and your GPA and your research experience while you're an undergrad, even if it means not doing the 4-year pledge, just because that can hopefully get you into a program that you don't have to pay for if you're interested in going on further. Yeah, I don't, that's the part I remember. Research is important. A lot of places don't make you take the GRE anymore. But if you do take it and you do really, really well, you should include it. If you take it and you don't do well, you probably don't want to include it. But it can boost you if it's good. And research experience, presentations, highlight those. And even if they're in your class, really emphasize the class research too. So I put in the chat that a lot of the lab classes at CSUSB that they're taught by faculty, and a lot of them incorporate faculty actual research, and so it's, we are able to give you at least some research experience at CSUSB, even if you don't get into an independent lab. And I would just highlight those as much as possible. I think that's all my advice.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Newcomb. Yeah, definitely, yeah, such a thorough answer. Yeah, we appreciate it. Ms. Ruck or Dr. Dodsworth, is there anything you'd want to add on to that answer?
One thing I guess that I would add quickly, I agree with what Dr. Newcomb said, is that it really helps to plan ahead. And so if you're, let's say if you're planning on graduating this spring and then want to go to graduate school next fall, like you want to be, getting your application ready now, because some of the application, deadlines might be, even in December. So that way, you can be ahead of the game and get letters of recommendation in time and have time to draft and get feedback on your, personal statement and things like that. So planning ahead is really good. When I was an undergraduate, I didn't really realize that. And then by the time, it was the end of September or October, and people are saying, "Oh, where are you applying to graduate school?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't know I needed to do that yet." And there ended up being some places that I was too late, partly because of what was mentioned before about taking the GRE, the general GRE, or the subject-specific GRE. I didn't have time to do the subject-specific one before some of the application deadlines. And not all of those exams are required or they're optional these days, but definitely try to plan ahead.
Jeremy, can I add something? It's so
Yeah.
funny you mentioned that. I totally forgot. That's actually why I spent 6 years. I could have gotten out in 5, but like by the time I realized, I only have one class left. Yeah, I could have taken it and gotten out, but the applications had already been due, and I didn't want to have a gap year because I had a kid. I didn't want a chance not coming back. So, and I knew it would just help me to get into a better place. So.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's just, and kind of medical school is similar. I think you even need to, usually you're applying a year in advance or more. And so it just helps to um stay on top of that sort of timeline. So that, I guess that's all I'll say.
Oh, and also, don't just apply to like the tier 1 awesome places. This is a PhD. If you noticed in all of our career paths, we've all kind of been all over the country. You can do it staying in one place, but it's way more difficult. So if you're open to moving around, that is going to be easier. And so, there's some really, really good schools in the middle of the country. The bad part is they're in the middle of the country. But it's only temporary, right? And so I would at least throw some of those in so that if you don't get your first choices, you have some hopefully good backups.
Yeah, even though it's a little bit expensive for, multiple applications and things, which you can sometimes find ways to get funding for that. It is good to apply to a lot of different places and kind of cast a wide net.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Dodsworth, Dr. Newcomb. Anything else anyone would like to add? Oh,
I just wanted to
yes.
emphasize that having letters of recommendation from people that know you well, who hopefully you've worked with aside from just maybe a brief hello, in class, because you want the best possible letter recommendation. And so people who have either worked with you in a research lab or who can speak to, your critical thinking skills, some other aspect of your personality can really go a long way when applying to grad school.
yes. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Ruck. Yeah, there are, yeah, definitely, yeah, we always try to recommend,
One more thing about grad
oh,
applications in your statement. I'm so sorry. Like, if you've had any kind of like resilience overcoming, like, I don't know if I would say I was a single parent. I definitely wouldn't have done it back in my generation, but because it would not have been looked at as like I have my act together and I'm serious. It would have looked at like, when is she gonna have time to do that? But I think if there's things like if you've overcome certain things, I think nowadays those are really looked at as a sign that you are a serious person and that you're going to commit and that um, you are able to handle and have that kind of thick skin, right? That I was saying is a good skill to have. So.
definitely. Yeah, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, and thank you, Catherine, so much for your question. Yeah, yeah, I hope that was, yeah, useful for your situation. So yeah, great. Yeah, so we actually have another audience question that I think we can take really quick. So Trinity is interested in wildlife research and wondering if there's any research happening on campus that would help with getting involved with that. Um, and so yeah, so definitely counselors on campus can definitely recommend that to you. Miss Rock, I know you have the most background in that. If there's anything you recommend for, just generally get involved with that, that, might occur to you.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, go online and look through the labs on the university's website. Look through the labs within the biology department, and you can usually tell, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there's like a brief description of faculty research on those profiles. And furthermore, a lot of the faculty members do have their own lab websites that you can go to learn more about their research. With regards to wildlife ecology, like I said, I do currently work in Dr. Bree Putman's lab. So she focuses on urbanization and fire effects on reptiles. I will say that she is leaving the university. to go to Cal State Long Beach next year. So she won't be around, but she's still a good resource to reach out to get advice. I believe she's also still running an undergrad project on campus, even though she won't physically be present. So you could ask her more about that if that interests you. Other labs include Dr. Joseph Erez. He works with marine organisms, genetics in fishes, and possibly Heidi Contreras, I think, insect ecology, if I'm right. So yeah, those are some examples of labs, but go online, look through the labs, look through the descriptions, see what interests you the most, and don't be afraid to reach out and email those professors.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Rock. Dr. Ellsworth, or if there's anything else, anyone else like to add to that answer?
Okay, well, I don't work with wildlife because I'm a molecular virologist, but I do have a project that collaborates with the Living Desert Zoo and the Cheetah Conservation Fund because we are trying to understand the molecular genetic host factors that contribute to the replication of feline coronavirus. So if you're want to do molecular conservation, which I also think Eris is a bit more molecular because he does a lot of genetic analysis and bioinformatics. I'm actually getting help from him on because I've never done these kind of analysis. And so this is where, again, I'm going into a new area because you got to always be, there's always new advances and new things. So kind of you always got to be critically thinking and and that. But yeah, there's also a lot of plant ecologist people, and just because you work on one system as an undergrad, it really, don't limit yourself from getting research experience just because you think it's not really what you want to do research on, because part of the it's just getting the experience of participating in research, and I've changed directions through every time I moved labs, right? So you can totally do that.
I also just wanted to add that even if you would like to work with wildlife, those positions are pretty competitive to work directly with animals. And so having experience working with vegetation is really useful because, that can help determine like habitat quality, for example. So having those other experiences, even if it's not directly working with wildlife, can still help you become a wildlife biologist if that is what interests you.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. Yeah, anything else anyone else would like to add? Okay. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Trinity, for your question. Yeah, I hope that was useful. Um, so yeah, we're approaching the kind of latter end of our panel. So I don't, so yeah, so we'll move on to another question that I had for you, kind of built on some topics that we were touching on before, our audience questions. So I wanted to ask, did you have a mentor during your education experience? And if so, what was the best piece of advice you received from them for your situation? So Dr. Dodsworth, if you'd like to comment on that.
Probably had several different mentors or types of mentors. Often it was people, it's now that I'm a professor working here, and I think all of us have talked about the importance that in one way or another that research has played in getting us where we are. I think of the either professors that I worked with or other people in research labs that I worked with were often really good mentors and sort of led by example, but also by actually actively giving advice. But yeah, I think that there's multiple places that you can look to for mentorship, and looking at different faculty here. One thing that I was going to say is that if you look on our biology website for biology, but a lot of the other departmental websites here have information on the research that faculty do, and for examples, you can look at that there, but you can also look and find maybe people's office hours so that you can go in and talk to them during that time too. I guess there's a lot of different ways that you can get mentorship, but sort of doing something where you're either doing research or doing an internship or even sort of one of these active laboratory sections in some of our classes is a good way to interact more and get more of that kind of mentorship.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Dodsworth. Dr. Newcomb, if you'd like to take it next, if you had any mentors and any advice that you felt was particularly useful from them.
Yeah, I definitely think mentors are very important. And as an undergrad, I can think of three important mentors I had. The guy I started washing dishes with, the woman I worked for in the lab, and then one of my honors professors, because I don't know, we just really connected. But as Dr. Dodsworth said, I guess I would challenge you all to go visit all of the professors that you're taking classes with at least once every semester. And this is actually advice I got from Gary's uncle, but he tells students, you should visit each of your professors at least once, and I bet you find one of them that you're going to want to visit again. Now, you can't just go there and not have anything to talk about. You have to come in with some question about the class or something, but conversations start, you get to know people, and then they're going to serve as someone who cares about your career and can give you advice and act as a mentor. So mentors aren't just the people that you work in the lab, and sometimes you can work in a lab and the lab head is not a mentor. So unfortunately for my postdoctoral experience, had the um, I wish I wasn't so stubborn and maybe left earlier, although, in the end, everything worked out. But, I didn't really have a very good mentor and I didn't realize he wasn't going to be a really good mentor at first. And so, it is important. So what I did is I went down the hall to a younger professor who had started and he sort of became my mentor. I would go see him about he read my grant proposal when I was looking to leave and things. So, sometimes you do have to make an effort to reach out to people, but I think once you do, many people are willing to help you if they can. And then you just develop that mentorship versus just an advisor, right? Which is probably what my postdoc advisor was.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Newcomb. Yeah, Ms. Ruck, if you'd like to, take that question as well.
Yeah, so just as others have said, I too have had a variety of mentors throughout my career. And I would add that I think the best quality a mentor can have is someone who's wanting you to succeed in your own career and someone that pushes you to go for opportunities that, may be a little out of your comfort level, but ultimately there's someone that you feel comfortable talking to about your career, about your passions, even about maybe the limitations that you have, whether financially or personally. It's those people who can really better direct you into the right opportunities.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Ruck. I feel like this common theme that going through a lot of this panel, just the value of networking, which a term that can feel like very business-like, very kind of very professional sounding, but all it is really just making connections with people along your educational journey, and there's always a ton of value in that, just for your personal life and for your profession and academic progress. So
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help. When I had this issue with my advisor, who wasn't really a mentor, basically telling me the climate's really bad for funding, you're not going to get the grant, I don't have time to read your paper. I just looked to other people and then, I mean, even a professor from Columbia who barely knew me, I said I really could use some advice and, he just read it. So it doesn't hurt to reach out. If people don't have time, they'll nicely decline. But, so some people are nice and, some people aren't, and that's where you need the thick skin. You just say, oh, well, and you move on to the next person who hopefully will be much nicer.
yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Newcomb. So yeah, we're just about in the last 10 minutes of our panel. So I want to give a bit of room for any last minute, just brief audience questions, just in case anyone has any that they'd like to call out. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and go on to our concluding question for the panel. Okay. So so I think the question I'd like to conclude with is, do you have any if you could give only one piece of advice to any of our students who are present today, just for succeeding in their undergrad or for progressing in their careers, what would you say to them? So, Dr. Dodsworth, if you'd like to start us with that.
Sure. It's a hard question.
No,
Um,
thank you.
uh, there's I guess several answers that I could give, but maybe just to maybe reiterate what Dr. Newcomb said. There's a lot of resources here at CSUSB, whether it's advising resources, faculty, and office hours that we have. And so don't be shy and don't be afraid to make use of those resources, whatever they are, because they're here for you. Your tuition is, helping to pay for them. And when I was an undergraduate, I don't hardly ever went to office hours. The way that I kind of got what I didn't know that I needed at the time was doing research in a lab. And that's not something that, everybody has time to do or knows that they want to do or should do. So just try to take advantage of the resources. Like Dr. Newcomb said, maybe make a challenge to yourself. Every class that you're in, try to go visit that that professor's office hours at least once a semester. And that helps make those connections that I was talking about that can be really useful down the road.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dodsworth. Yeah, and if I could add to that, of course, if anyone in attendance is a Science Success Center student, definitely feel free to lean on your, counselors associated with us as well for any services that we provide. We, try to be there for you as much as possible. So yeah, please feel free to use us as well, as much as you can. Dr. Newcomb, if you'd like to take that question next.
Sure. So I think my piece of advice will be that you should believe in yourself and a lot of people fall prey to imposter syndrome. Try not to do that. And I have a brother who who has his PhD in inorganic chemistry. He's much older than I come from a big, huge Irish Catholic family type of thing. But he said to me one time, because I was really frustrated with grad school and feeling like, what am I doing? Do I know what I'm doing? And he said, don't worry, Laura, no one knows what they're doing. Just do your best. So that's the way I go with it. And then I got a fortune cookie the other day. I just want to tell you, it's on my door. It says, "Be curious always, for knowledge will not acquire you. You must acquire it." So be curious and acquire knowledge and have confidence in yourself and a bit of a thick skin for the people that it's not you, it's them.
I love that. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Newcomb. Yeah, definitely valuable for anybody. Yeah, and then Ms. Ruck, if you'd like to close out.
Yeah, so similarly, I would say don't limit yourself. And this can be applied, across all disciplines, academic, STEM, just various jobs. So I would say, when you're applying to jobs, if that's something that you want to do, apply to everything. Like, even if it says that they're taking over hundreds of applications, don't be afraid to apply, because the worst thing that happens if you don't get it and you move on and you forget about it. I'll say that I've definitely had a variety of I guess rejections, job rejections, even grad school rejections. Don't let that limit yourself, and don't let that limit your potential, because there are so many opportunities out there that need people. And a lot of times what happens is that people they get that imposter syndrome and they won't apply, and then they just of course aren't going to get it. So yeah, don't limit your potential, and believe in yourself, like Dr. Newcomb said.
Yeah, I put in the chat, a lot of times people think they don't have the skills, but you probably do have the skills better than you think you do. And you probably have enough skills that you're better than, what they're, nobody has all those skills probably. So just apply, don't be afraid. And this is something like men tend to apply more than women. Women tend to think that they don't have the skills enough. So, definitely just be confident and apply.
Yes, yes, such valuable advice. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Ruck, and yeah, Dr. Newcomb. Uh, so yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I think that is going to bring us to the end of our panel. Yeah, so thank you so much to our panelists, Dr. Dodsworth, Dr. Newcomb, Ms. Ruck. Yeah, all your advice has been so valuable. Yeah, we truly appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for our audience for attending today. Now, I do want to mention really quick before we conclude, again, if you were in the Science Success Center and you did not get the link that we put earlier, we'll go ahead and put that in the chat one more time, just to give anyone a chance to log their attendance for being here today. So please go ahead and use that as we conclude today. But yes, again, thank you so much to our panelists and everyone for being here. Yeah, so we will go ahead and conclude. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, I just want to say thank you, and I put my email in the chat if you need to contact me.
Right, thank you so much, Ms. Rock.
Bye.